We're now going to pivot, that's another buzzword, pivot toward looking for ways to challenge the status quo and think differently about what the business of tomorrow looks like. So we're going to enter a new phase, another phase now. It's called breakthrough, where nothing is impossible, okay? And our next speaker is going to focus on the importance of resilience, innovation, and the role of cities in delivering on the Paris Climate Agreement and the global goals. People always assume that UNGA is all about presidents and prime ministers and the big NGOs descending on New York and having bilaterals and multilaterals, etc. People forget that government isn't just global, it isn't just national, it's also regional, it's local, it's urban. And one of the best attended events here, well there's several, but is the one where it gets the mayors together, not just in New York, but outside in other parts of the States, but a lot of them do gather together here in this city to talk about how they can drive forward change from the urban level. And our speaker is going to look at the role of cities in delivering the global goals. It's my honor to introduce to you the leader of a city which is well known for its industrial heritage, but has regularly come first, and I was very surprised when I read this a short time ago, first or second in the Economist magazine's league table of the US's most livable cities. You'd be surprised when I mention this name. Please welcome the Honorable Bill Peduto, Mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, home of the Steelers. Yes, livable city. My God.
Morning, my friend.
Good to see you, yes.
To see you.
Fantastic.
And thank you. Thank you for the kind
Brilliant.
introduction.
No, yes.
So I'm sitting in my office and, it's like one of those late afternoons and you get like about a 5-minute break when you're the mayor. And I'm looking at my phone and all of a sudden I get an alert. And usually my alerts are like the Penguins have traded defenseman Trevor Daley or, it's like usually not anything significant. But I look down and all it says is President Trump to pull out of Paris Agreement. And I'm like, damn, I was in Paris. We did some work over there, and you know what? This really is going to be bad. 5 minutes later, I go to Twitter because that's where I get my news. And I see a tweet from Sean Spicer, and it said, I was elected to represent the people of Pittsburgh, not Paris. And according to my chief of staff, the only thing he remembers is me running in a rage into his office and yelling, Pittsburgh! And I spontaneously put out a tweet that was heard around the world. Now, let's look at two things. First, the negative decision of what the president had done and all the work that people in this room have put a lifetime into doing and the understanding of what direction the world is going and all that stuff we know about. But on that day, there were 61 cities in the United States that were the climate cities. 61 cities that said, regardless of what our federal government does, or regardless of what our state government does, we are going to abide by the rules of the Paris Agreement, and we are going to lower our carbon footprint and make a significant change with our brothers and sisters around the world. That was the day before. Today, there are 367 U.S. cities that are a part of that, joined by corporations and universities and large institutions, and we understand that. But the question is, why did it matter? I mean, the president used it because of alliteration. It could have been, I was elected to represent the people of Poughkeepsie, but he chose Pittsburgh. It's because of what we have gone through in Pittsburgh. And I'll give you the short rendition, but I can go through the times that our city was flooded. The entire downtown wiped away in the 1930s, the 19th century when our city burned to the ground. But I'll just give you the one time, 1979. How many people remember 1979? And any time I give this speech, it's like so many young millennials are like, oh, yeah, my parents tell me about it. But 79, I started high school. And it was such a great time to be in Pittsburgh because that fall, the Pirates won the World Series. Remember Willie Stargell, We Are Family? Yeah, it's been a long time. The Steelers won their 4th Super Bowl in 6 years, and Pittsburgh died. We died. Our economic heart was ripped out of us. We went through the 80s watching our family members export like we used to export steel. We watched our friends leave because there was no economic opportunity. We lost more people in the 1980s than New Orleans lost after Katrina, and they never came home. We had unemployment greater than during the Great Depression. 19%, triple what Detroit's is today. And we had to borrow because we had no tax base until our debt ratio of our city was greater than New York City when it went bankrupt. And there were no programs to build us out. There were no programs to dig us out. We just had to do what we do. We rolled up our sleeves and we went to work. We changed that economy, but every politician that ran in the 1980s and most of the candidates that ran in the 1990s, and I know this for certain because I was the manager of most of those campaigns, said how they were going to reopen the mills, how they were going to reopen the mines, how their economic development strategy would put people back in manufacturing jobs. And it was a false hope. It was because there was nothing else there that this was given to us as what we could do. And by the mid-1990s, when the last steel mill closed in the city of Pittsburgh, there was a battle going on. It was a battle between the United Steelworkers and the Sierra Club. And the basic argument of this is our only part of our economy, we have to hold on to it, versus this is a part of our past, but it doesn't have to be a part of our future. 10 years later, the same city, the new alliance would be born. It would be called the Blue-Green Alliance, created by the United States Steelworkers and the Sierra Club, working together to say, we don't have to have mutually exclusive economic development theory. What if we were the area where wind turbines were manufactured? They were created and built in eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania, instead of having to import them from Germany. What if we started to be able to put together solar technology in places like Michigan and Pittsburgh, and be able then to manufacture and assemble it in places like West Virginia instead of in India and in China? What if we started to build a new economy out of the Rust Belt that would be able then to be a part of the future, wedding our past to our future? Today, clean energy jobs in the state of Pennsylvania outnumber the number of jobs in coal, oil, and gas combined. Today, Allegheny County, where the city of Pittsburgh is, leads the state in clean energy jobs, even surpassing Philadelphia. Today, companies like Google, and Uber, and Intel, and Microsoft, and Apple, and Bosch, and Tata, and Disney, and Oculus, and Facebook, and on and on and on call Pittsburgh home is their center of global innovation. Because back in those days in 1979, when the city died, there were some really smart people who started thinking about, what if our future was different than our past? And instead of offering a false hope and a false narrative, they offered a long-term plan of how a city that had its economic heart ripped out, a city that everyone had said had lived its time and had died, could come back. You know, you can bomb a city, you can flood a city, you can burn a city to the ground, you can rip the economic heart of the city, but if you invest in its people, the city will come back. Now, in that 3.5 mile area, the 55 square miles that is the city of Pittsburgh, we get it, and we are on board. We are planning by 2030 to be 100% renewable, and we're one of the first cities to do so. We've raised the challenge for zero waste. We are working with the Department of Energy, creating district energy districts that combine up with smart corridors of transportation, and we already have 5 different experiments of autonomous vehicles on our streets. Uber, Ford, BMW, Audi, GM, all investing billions in Pittsburgh to see the next generation of transportation that will be shared, electric, and autonomous. We are connecting it with technology, with the smartest traffic signals in the world, traffic signals that actually learn, in making the future without a fossil fuel need. We're partnering with our fossil fuel companies, companies that have been there for 100 years. There's a reason why your oil is called Pennzoil or Quaker State. It's because it's where it was discovered. The first coal seam was discovered on the Pittsburgh riverbanks of the Monongahela River. But we're giving them an opportunity to be a part of it and to expand their portfolio in these partnerships as we create new distributed energy programs. But if you go 35 miles out of Pittsburgh, it's a very different story. It's a story of economic recession, of not seeing a place, of being a part of all those different things that we talk about, of feeling left out, of feeling left behind. And our challenge is to make it so that a false narrative isn't the only words that they hear, and that a false hope isn't the only thing that they grab to. In post-industrial cities throughout this world, of the areas that led in the second industrial revolution and produced the products that built this world and built our cities, we have the opportunity to change that narrative. To talk to our brothers and sisters who are going through what we went through 30 years ago and say, there is a better hope, there is a better promise than reopening that mine, of being able to be a part of this, of being able to invest in renewable energy and having the opportunity to manufacture it and make it in America. But that requires a partnership. That requires an agreement. That requires global recognition. That requires being part of the Paris Agreement. And now you know why I wrote that tweet. I'm 52 years old. I lived in Pittsburgh my whole life. All I saw was my city lose population, lose companies, basically being left behind. I now get to be the mayor of a city that's booming, a city that's growing. And my goal is to make sure that the rest of Western Pennsylvania comes along for the ride. And there's no way that I can do that if our national policies are to bury our head in the sand and to believe that if we ignore this, it will just go away. And we need all of you, the people of Michigan, the people of Ohio, the people of Pennsylvania, the people of West Virginia, to be a part of understanding how we can do both. We can reverse the clock on climate change in the long term by taking the immediate necessary steps if we believe in the long-term strategy and the sacrifice that will be needed. And we can invest in an American Marshall Plan that will put those jobs in the areas where people need it and be able to see economic reality become the formula of making it all happen. Never forget, friends, that green has two sides to it. The most critical and important side of the environment, but the economic side to the individuals who have been left behind. And look no further than just over a couple of hills from where you're sitting now to a little city that sits where the confluence of the Allegheny and the Monongahela form the Ohio, and the lessons that we learned over these past 30 years. Yes, Pittsburgh and Paris, indeed.
Stay here, stay here, stay here. Thank you very much. Mayor Bill Peduto of Pittsburgh. Oh, you're getting a standing ovation. This is good. My. Does that happen often? Every so often.
Did you tell them I almost missed it because I was late in my cab?
No. Well, this is very good. This is very good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much indeed for the mayor of Pittsburgh. Before you go, Bill, I've got a quick question for you. I note that you did tweet some 5 hours ago. Yes, you said it here. Solar employs more people in the U.S., or in U.S. electricity generation than oil, coal, and gas combined.
And in Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania.
As well.
And I note that you've had a couple of people who haven't been happy. Of course, that's the nature of Twitter, social media. Dr. Funk in Pennsylvania. I don't know if he's a real person.
He is, unfortunately.
Oh, is he constantly trolling you? Is he trolling you?
Yes.
Okay. He says you can only make this claim because of tax credits to this industry. And somebody else called Mark, who didn't show his face, he was an egg, like an egg. He claims it takes nearly 80 solar workers to produce as much energy as one coal worker, and nearly 40 to 1 for natural gas. Inconvenient truth, he says. So what do you make of that? How much pushback are you getting in Pittsburgh?
Well, there is some. I mean, and there is obviously still a very strong fossil fuel industry that exists in Western Pennsylvania. But for the most part, they understand that the clock is ticking. That the banks of this world and those that fund the banks are investing more and more readily into renewable energies and less into fossil fuels. And fortunately, we have metrics that we can use in order to be able to determine the amount of energy that is needed to create kilowatt hours, and to be able to do it not based upon Twitter and comments, but to base it upon science.
Right.
And what we see is a constant reduction when it comes to renewable energy as the technology gets greater, and we know that we're going into a nexus where it will be able to be produced less and produce more energy than even natural gas. We're not there yet, but we're moving in that direction, and it's constantly getting even more.
And if subsidies, Obama-era subsidies, etc., were removed, how would the industry stand then?
Well, it would be difficult because we are subsidizing the fossil fuels. So it would be a difficult economic strategy. But I think what you'll end up seeing is that countries around the world will step in to fill the void. But unfortunately, then they'll also have equity in the companies that are being created by young entrepreneurs from the United States. My goal is to understand how Western Pennsylvania can have an economic impact in the next 80 years that will lead it at the forefront of energy, but not be reliant upon fossil fuel.
Mayor Bill Peduto, thank you very much indeed. Wonderful, thank you very much. That's right. A mayor acting locally, but also thinking globally. Mayor Bill Peduto.